Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us from wherever you are. My name is Melissa, and I am one of the directors for the Women Who Code Boston chapter. I am here with Catherine today to share some tips and insights for new engineering managers or for those who are considering the management path. Let's get started. So we'll just introduce ourselves. So again, my name is Melissa. I am an engineering manager at GitHub, and I have been there for almost 3 years, but I actually just became a manager in January, so it's only been a few months. Catherine, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Catherine Dworak. I'm a software engineering lead and manager at Yext, and I've been a manager now for 4 years, so a little bit longer.
Awesome. Well, so yeah, we're just gonna have a conversation, and let's just start with what do managers actually do? What is your day-to-day, Catherine?
Yeah, so most of my day-to-day is a lot of checking in with my direct reports, so that can look kind of differently, but we do a lot of 30-minute check-ins, one-on-ones, whatever you want to call them, to talk a little bit about career goals, how things are going, how people are enjoying their current work, what are they not liking, and those are some great opportunities to kind of give feedback throughout the course of the weeks. Maybe it's more specific to the type of work that they're doing that given week, but we also will occasionally do like, quarterly performance reviews or something where we give a little bit more feedback on career growth or things like that. We check in on goals and see how people are feeling about where they are in their current, career life cycle and where they want to be and how we can, get there and making sure they're on track, in that case. Yeah, how about you? What's your day to day?
My day-to-day varies a lot, as I'm still trying to learn the ropes, basically. But yeah, lots of checking in with my directs. I have 4 right now and 2 on parental leave. But yeah, doing some check-ins every week. I also check in on the projects that they're working on. I don't oversee those necessarily. My engineers might lead those projects, and I just kind of drop in the weekly sync stuff like that to make sure everything's going okay. And yeah, I facilitate any feedback that either they have for others or they have for me, or that I have to relay to them. So lots of kind of playing the middle person a bit of, juggling a bunch of things. But yeah, depending on their needs, bunch of mentoring, coaching, sponsoring, any way that I can empower them to do their work, essentially. And so that kind of boils down to advocating for whatever their needs are, and or helping them navigate through some big changes, because there's definitely a lot of stuff going on at GitHub. So we have to kind of talk through that together as a team. But yeah, highly depends on what the needs are that day.
Yeah, it can be really variable. And I think, like you said, kind of being that person to relay, because a lot of what we do is check in with our directs, but I'd say the other half of my job is checking in with other managers or other leads on the team, talking about, hey, I got this feedback about this thing not going well. I think we're going to need to maybe change this process or this workflow, and like, how are we going to do this, or what stakeholders do we need to make that change? And so that's definitely the other half. And as you said, very variable, week to week, just responding to the biggest kind of problem or fire that there is, and seeing what changes we can make. So
Yeah, totally. Cool. So let's talk about how this all got started. So how did you become a manager? How did you get into this role?
yeah, so I probably got into it fairly young relative to how some people start off. That's one of the cool things about joining a very small company. I started as manager 2 years out of college. We just had a lot of rapid growth on the team, and the opportunity became available. And I have always really enjoyed kind of that having a mentor like role in the past, like even starting in high school, previous summer jobs, being a swim coach or something, getting to know people well, in college, being a small group leader. And so you kind of, to me, I've always really enjoyed coding, but I've also have this love of connecting with people. And so management kind of seemed like a cool way to combine those two things. And put it into practice in my work.
That's so fascinating. I'm kind of on a similar boat here. I've always kind of been a leader growing up. Even in like high school, like I was like drum major for the marching band. I led a bunch of like musical groups. And in college, like I was the president of the like computer science student group and led all these things, and I still continue to do that outside of work. Even as like WWCode director right now, like I do a lot of leading. And yeah, I guess I've always wanted to be a manager, and I didn't really realize like how fitting it would be for me until I just kind of reached a point in my like engineering career where like I'm not sure I really want to learn more technical stuff. Like I'm sure I can, there's so much out there. But I was like, I don't want to do more of a deep dive and like climb the engineering ladder. Like I want to do more people things, because that's what I really love. And so I thought it was a great opportunity for me to bring a lot of these leadership skills into my job. And yeah, and it's worked out so far. But yeah, I guess I've always kind of wanted to do it. I never felt ready. Like there were a few other opportunities, management opportunities that came up, but I didn't feel ready for it. And then like, I don't know, something happened in my brain in the past couple of years. And I was like, oh, let's do this. Like, let's actually, go full speed ahead and see where I can go. So, but that's really cool that we're kind of, on the same story.
In that way. Yeah. So how have your first couple months been as manager? What do you enjoy most about it so far?
I really love it. I feel like I am doing all the things that I really loved doing when I was I actually joined GitHub as a software engineer. And I was a senior software engineer, and the stuff that I really loved about that role was mentoring others and like leading projects and a lot of the sort of like project management stuff, and improving processes. And now like that, I'm doing all of that as my actual job, and it's so much fun for me. It's kind of like a huge puzzle for me. I love problem solving, and it's just a lot of like helping people connect the dots. So I think that's what makes me really enjoy it. And just kind of helping people. It's a huge part of it. So yeah, how about you?
Yeah, I like what you said. Sometimes, the classic question you get when you're giving interviews is like, what do you love about your job? And I think, as you said, problem solving is something that I often will say. And kind of as you were reflecting on your previous experience, back in high school or things like that, I have also been somebody that just has often enjoyed wearing a lot of hats. And so as a manager, you get to do that. And I love to problem solve too. And I think that's why I am, software engineer. It's why I was drawn to computer science. You get to solve problems all day long. But you get to solve problems also as a manager, just in a different sense. And it's a different type of puzzle, and the pieces look a little bit different, but that's ultimately what you're doing is, trying to, take that feedback as we're talking about and make things better for your directs or for the wider team. And it's been just really cool to see all the changes that we've been able to make over time to kind of help our team members grow, and just watch, when I first started on the team, we had 7 people and now we're up to 50. And so there's been like so much change and growth that's happened over a short amount of time. And it's just, it's really cool to have been able to say like, oh, I was a part of that. And it's a little bit bigger than yourself, and to see hopefully your directs also really thrive in that environment and be happy to stick around as well.
Yeah, I can totally relate to the whole, doing something that's bigger than yourself thing. I think that's kind of what I've realized from everything I do outside of work, right? Like I actually work with a lot of a few different nonprofits, and I've loved that sort of space. And they all have, excuse me, all happen to be involved in underrepresented groups in tech or performing arts or all that kind of stuff where you're trying to increase diversity, inclusion, and everything. And I feel like a lot of that work was really translatable to the work that I'm doing at work. So yeah, totally understandable there. Awesome. So thinking back to maybe when you first started, is there anything that you wish you had known when you became a manager or right before you became one?
Yeah, this is probably an odd thing to talk about, but I do wish that I had known or just realized upfront that your relationships with your teammates are probably going to change. And it's probably a little bit more evident if you are, we talked a little bit about people person. I think it's not definitely everyone, but you could be somebody on the team that's just really good friends with a lot of people. And that's not to say that as a people manager, you have to end all friendships. But there is this natural shift that will happen because now if you become a management of a peer or you're the manager of a friend of a peer, you're now a manager to them. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it opens up a lot of opportunities for mentorship and coaching. But, that first time you have to deliver some critical feedback is probably going to be a little bit difficult. And it's probably going to be a little bit weird on their end too. And over time it'll feel a little bit more normal, but that was a little bit of a mental adjustment for me when I first started out to kind of wrap my head around the fact that I had made that change and it was gonna, kind of impact those relationships I previously had. And, it's been cool to forge that relationship a little bit differently as a manager and to kind of see some fruit come out of it as like a mentor and a coach. But, I think it's something good to consider as you walk into this new role about, do you value those like being buddy and friends with some of those peers, and are you okay with kind of maybe taking on a new role as management in like the team?
Yeah, 100%. So right before I came into this role, I actually had like a trial period on my last team. My manager, I talked to my manager about becoming a manager at some point, and at that time there was kind of a need to help him out because he kind of adopted this other team and he had too many people to manage, and he was like, okay, how about you help me manage like these 4 people to help me balance the load, but also like this is a great opportunity for you to try things out, see if you like it. And the way that worked was that I ended up managing people who were originally my peers. So that relationship shifted, and it was an opt-in sort of a thing. Like he had talked to them about it, made sure that they're okay, and made sure that this wasn't going to be weird for anyone. But yeah, it was definitely a weird shift. But it was fine. Like I think what kind of helped was being transparent, making sure that you set boundaries with them. And like, for example, for the boundaries part, I went from mentoring this person in coding, like doing a lot of like code reviews and like teaching them the ways of our system and everything, because he had just joined our team recently, to managing him. And I was still doing code reviews, but I had to do it through a different lens. And that was really hard for me, and I struggled, and that impacted both that person and myself in what our relationship was like. And I didn't realize at the time, like, that I had to be clear as to what the expectations are there. And like we said, like wearing many hats, like making sure that, we're drawing the line, like, okay, I'm wearing this hat right now, so I'm going to speak in this from this perspective. And then like, I'm going to change my hat to this other perspective, and this is how it is. and then having them understand that that's what's going on here. I guess technically I was in a hybrid role of sorts, which is why I was wearing these many hats, but totally understandable about, that whole relationship change thing. And I definitely thought about how, what would happen after this trial period? Do I go back to being their peers? Like, that's gonna be kind of weird. But I'm pretty close with that team, and so it was going to be fine either way. But there's still that small like inkling in my head. It's like, well, what if this doesn't work out? But I ended up, switching teams, which is totally fine. All of that's to say, yes, that's totally unexpected. But I think, what I bring to my new team now is just as I would with my peers, like being very candid and very transparent, but also knowing when to filter or phrase things in a certain way that is appropriate as far as like, how information should trickle down from high up to down to the ICs. So, yeah.
Yeah. What about you? Anything else that you wish you'd known before you stepped into this role?
Feedback, for sure. Practicing giving and receiving feedback. I think that is a really useful skill no matter what role you're in. I've done a lot of reading up on that, and I could probably do more reading up on that and more practice on that, to be honest. But yeah, there's a good way and bad way of delivering feedback. Yeah. And it's tough. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I have that on, my list of things first-time managers should really, be prepared for. It is the feedback piece. It's really tough, and I could go through a litany of ways that I've messed it up over the years, and you kind of see it unfold problematically, in the short term and the long term. I think it's really easy to stumble over your words when giving critical feedback, or to try to, those sandwiches where you give some positive and then you maybe like gave some like vague negative feedback because you're uncomfortable and you like are just trying to get through it or not make them feel bad, but then you're not really clear about your expectations. And so then, a week later, it's still a problem. You're like, oh, I have to go back and do this again. And clearly I wasn't very good at communicating it. And it's really key. I think feedback is key for preventing surprises down the line. I mean, the worst thing you can possibly have, I think, as a manager is somebody going into a performance review and being surprised in a bad way, about a rating or, something that you wrote. Ideally, like throughout the year, they should be getting that feedback. And I think it was really hard for me as a new manager to give that feedback often, as soon as they need it, to not kind of like hold it in till the performance review, or because, you're not sure how to message it. You're not sure how it will be received. You're worried about people getting defensive, how they're going to react. And so, I've been really thankful. Our company has used, for example, like some courses like Life Labs, and they've provided some really nice frameworks for, how to approach a difficult conversation. How do you set it up? How do you, present the facts and ask for, a change? And practice has been really key. We did a lot of like scenarios and role playing amongst the managers. And I think, you just get more comfortable over time. That it just sometimes takes time, but I definitely had a lot of slip ups in the beginning.
Yeah, I continue to work on that for sure. And no matter how much training or reading I've done, it's tough because not every situation is the same, right? So yeah. Any other sorts of feedback that you would give to first-time managers?
So if I were giving some advice to first-time managers, one thing I learned, I think this was also one of the hardest things I learned, is that the skills that make you a successful software engineer are not necessarily the same skills that will make you a good manager. And this is like a good thing. It means that management is a really good opportunity to stretch yourself. You learn a lot of soft skills, communication, or things like that. But I think if you're just like, somebody that's been a really diligent, engineer and individual contributor, you get all your work done, you work really hard, like brute force. If you try to apply that to management, you're probably going to crash and burn, and your team's probably not going to like you very much. I think like you really have to learn empathy. You have to learn, those boundaries, when to be lenient, like when somebody needs some extra time and needs some help, and when you need to give that critical feedback. It's not always, I think something that a manager once pointed out to me, which I'm grateful for, is, I hold myself to a really high bar. And that's like a really good thing for myself. I mean, maybe I'm a little too intense sometimes, but holding all my reports to that personal high bar was something I think I brought into management at first and was way too high. I think, you have to maybe approach every person on your team like they're not yourself, and you really need to get to know them and what motivates them. And so if you kind of don't take the step back to say, okay, now I'm a manager and I need to look at this with a new lens, I think you will crash and burn like I did a few times or more.
Yeah. Oh my God, I'm totally blanking on words right now. But that's part you're going to edit. Yeah, I think, related to that, being patient with yourself,
yeah,
is huge when you're a new manager, and probably just throughout in general. You don't really become a great manager overnight. Like I keep going back to my previous manager and saying, like, how did you even deal with this, like on a day-to-day for years? Like it's only been a few months for me, and I have to realize that a lot of managers who have been around for a while, like they've seen a lot of different things and they've experienced a lot of different things, and to get to their level, it's going to take time. And I mean not that you can't start out great, but it's going to be a journey for sure. Yeah.
I think something else I've thought a lot about is, when I started my job as a software engineer, I learned how to be a good engineer from, looking at code reviews and seeing other people's codes and learning like eloquent ways to do something, or this is a better approach, or something. You really do learn from the people around you. And when you start out, you probably have a manager and they manage a certain way, and they might be a great manager, and if so, you're really lucky, and you should maybe really value that, because you might not always have a great manager. I mean, managers are people too, and they're all growing, and there's a lot of different styles of management. And so I think when I first became a manager, it's natural to kind of mirror the management styles that you've been exposed to, but it's always good to kind of take a step back. You don't have to handle things the same way your manager handled them. If you think they did a great job, great. But, if you feel like you have a manager, that maybe doesn't provide enough coaching or mentoring, it doesn't provide enough frequent feedback, taking the time to really seek out those resources to provide more feedback. Like that's not the only way to manage. And I think probably every manager could be improved upon. So even if you think you have a great manager, to think about things that you wish they did differently, and to seek out those skills so that you can put them into practice.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Actually, one of the first few questions that I ask with my new team is, what kind of things have you seen in your previous managers that you would like to see me do? Like, what were your favorite things about, how they managed you? And that was really helpful. And then, combining that with my own experiences, that helped me formulate, okay, like what kind of a manager do I want to be? Because like you said, like not every manager is the same, and there's different styles. And going back to what we were saying much earlier, is that every team is different, all the needs are different, and so you have to kind of adjust yourself accordingly based on that too. So yeah, 100% agree that, you know, you just kind of have to learn your own style, essentially. Yeah, awesome. I could just keep piggybacking on your advice, and it's all really great advice. So, so what would you say to anyone who's considering the management path? What would be some good next steps?
I would definitely, I mean, the obvious one is just to talk to your manager. I think, you know, they are a great person to bounce ideas off of, and they have a good understanding of you, hopefully, and they also have the experience of being a manager, so they can tell you, you know, a little bit more about what it looks like on your team and in your company and things like that, so you can get a sense of, is this something you would like to do? I think one of the questions we try to ask in our check-ins just regularly is, you know, what do you like about your current job, and what would you wish you would be doing more of or less of? And I think that's a great exercise to ask whether you're considering management or not. But, you know, if that answer of what would you like to be doing more of involves people-oriented or team-oriented tasks, that could be a great, you know, way to tell if management might be the right thing for you. I know when I first started out, I got involved pretty early on in our internship program. I was, you know, leading, you know, making changes to the training and making sure we had mentors assigned and doing all that type of work. A lot of recruiting. I've done so many interviews. It's not even funny. And, you know, those types of skills, it's not necessarily directly tied to management, but again, you have that like people focused and relationship building. I think those were kind of the first signs to me again that like, oh, management might be something I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think finding other ways to lead while you're still in IC is a great way to kind of, you know, get a foot in the door towards management path. And I agree that you should talk to your manager about it. I think that was a huge step for me, and not just talking to my manager about it, but my manager's manager and like other people at work about it. Because if there's anything that I've learned is that you have to advocate for yourself. If you know that you want to do this thing, you have to tell people about it, because they're not going to read your minds. They're not going to just know based on, you know, all these things that you're doing, which is great things. Like if you are helping with hiring process, you're leading these teams and initiatives and everything, that's great. But they don't know until you actually say something that, you know, you're trying to work towards this new path. And so, you know, you just have to talk about it, advocate for yourself. You have to be kind of like your own best friend sort of thing, like a lot of people like to say. And yeah, and then when you do talk to others about it, you know, learn about, you know, what styles that they like as well too. And like what they're, or if you're talking to a manager or a manager's manager about this stuff, ask them what they're looking for in their own managers. And that's really helpful. Another thing that I've also done is talk to other managers who have made a similar transition from IC to management, and especially like within my own company. And that has helped a lot, because that tells me, you know, how it works within, you know, the context of our own company, but also what their journey was. And so far, you know, not every journey has been the same. You know, for anyone who has transitioned into management, and that's been really insightful for me. Like there is not this like sort of paved path that, you know, steps 1 through 10 or whatever to become a manager sort of a thing. But that was really helpful. And one of the things that I learned from those conversations is, you know, as far as if you know you want to become a manager, like think about your timeline. Like when do you want to reach that goal of yours? Because obviously like you can't just become one the next day. So one of the questions they had me thinking about for myself was, how much more steam do I have left as an engineer? Like, am I totally like burnt out as an engineer? I don't want to do any coding anymore, and I want to do all people things. Or do I have some time to buy to sort of like, you know, plan this out a little bit further? So I found that extremely helpful. I don't know if you have any similar experiences as far as, you know, talking to others about this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Yext was relatively small when I started. So outside of, my manager, it was
Mhm.
kind of which is kind of wild. But I would say, especially for anybody that's like on the fence, I just would encourage you to seek out opportunities where you can kind of practice some soft skills. So like being a mentor. If your company has like a mentorship program where you have new hires come and they are assigned a mentor, or somebody to like walk them through training, to maybe take that on, and then to ask yourself at the end of the day, am I energized by these activities, or can I not wait to get back to my code? And that's probably like a great, whatever you answer to that is probably a great indication about whether you would enjoy management or not. Because, you can talk to a lot of managers and hopefully they're going to be very excited about the fact that they're managers and will tell you all the cool things. And it can still be hard sometimes for me. I learn by doing. And so if you're that type of person, then I think having this practice of like, practicing what, you know, um, coding a little bit and then having to answer a question or something, and helping to guide somebody through something, like, does that drive you crazy? Or, is it something that, it's like a little bit of an adjustment, but then you're like, oh, okay, I can get behind that. That was pretty rewarding, helping somebody through that. And you could see it, becoming more of your day-to-day can, I think, help give you a little bit more of like a guideline of whether it's something you might want to pursue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Totally agree with you about if you are sure, you definitely need to tell your manager, and make sure you're asking about what are the next steps, that I need to do to show that I'm ready for this opportunity.
Yeah. I also want to add real quick that, management, if you're an IC right now and you think about management, I want you to know that that's not your only option as far as career growth goes. And, depending on the size of the company that you work at and everything, there could be different ladders, different rankings and levels, for engineering, but sometimes it's also the same thing for managers. And it's a job change. Like it's not the same, it's not a promotion. So, that's something to consider. And it's also okay to stay in IC for as long as you want. Like management isn't for everyone. And it's also okay to go back to go become a manager and then go back to an IC. It's okay. It's not like a, point of no return sort of a thing. So, I think it's a more flexible path than some may think. Awesome. So, just to wrap things up a little bit, are there any resources that you would recommend for anyone who's exploring this path?
I mean, gosh, there's so many podcasts and so many books. It's not even funny. I think you should definitely ask your manager if your company has any sorts of training on the subject. I know my company has used LinkedIn Learning. I talked a little bit about Life Labs. So sometimes companies have resources where they've already paid for the service or something, and you can just go through some of the trainings, which can be really, really nice. I've read a lot of books on my own, and one of my favorites was actually called Management Mess to Leadership Success. I read this book about 2 years into becoming a manager, and it honestly just goes through 30 mistakes the author made as a first-time manager. And I wish I had read it earlier. I had done a lot of the similar mistakes. So I think this book was very relatable for me. I really kind of understood, and related to the author a lot. It brought me honestly a lot of comfort about mistakes that I have made, that I wasn't the only one. But I really recommend it for first-time managers. I think it could help you maybe sidestep some of those mistakes, or at least recognize those opportunities earlier where you could maybe handle something a little bit better. So that's been my favorite book so far.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm currently reading The Manager's Path, a guide to tech leaders navigating growth and change.
Yeah, we passed that one out too. It's a good one.
Yeah. I'm about halfway through, and I think it's a very interesting book because it takes you through what the different sort of roles are in this sort of path. It goes from, being an IC to like a senior IC to, some sort of like tech lead and beyond. And it outlines all the different sort of expectations you might have around that role and how to sort of maximize those responsibilities and expectations and everything. And it's really good so far. So I look forward to finishing that. And there's some really great online resources I've been checking up on as well. Wherewithal.com, basically all this content by Laura Hogan. She has coaching, training, workshops, super awesome website to check out. And actually right now there's Lead Dev Together, which is a conference that's spread over, I think like 6 weeks worth between April and June. And it's like a 3-hour session of all this great content on being a leader at your company. So this is great for like senior and staff engineers, as well as managers too, and some really great stuff. So I'm actually in the middle of that right now. It's like every couple weeks. So yeah, awesome. So that wraps it up for us today. Thank you, Catherine, for joining me today on this awesome discussion. If there are any questions or feedback on this content, I would love to hear from any of you on Twitter. My handle is MXIE. Catherine, I don't know if you have a way for people to reach you if they have questions.
I'm not on Twitter. Maybe this is a sign. But yeah, you can probably definitely find me on LinkedIn. Catherine Dworak. My last name is DWORAK. So yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks again. And thanks again to everyone who's watching. Have a good day.